safest immigration facility as Alligator Alcatraz. And despite the fact that ICE detention is not supposed to be punitive, the Florida facility seems to be an embrace of the kind of cruelty the Trump administration has directed at immigrant communities since his inauguration. As Reuters put it, quote, the facility sits some 37 miles from Miami in a vast subtropical wetland teeming with alligators, crocodiles, and pythons. Fearsome imagery the White House has leveraged to show its determination to purge migrants it says were wrongly allowed to stay in the country under former President Joe Biden's administration. One Florida lawmaker telling NBC News, quote, they are locking people in a swamp with extreme heat with no clear plan for humane conditions. At a press conference earlier today to celebrate the facility's opening, Trump heralded it as what he hoped would be the first step in a national project.
Well, I think we'd like to see them in many states, really, many states. This one, I know Ron's doing a second one, at least a second one, and probably a couple of more. And, you know, at some point, they might morph into a system where you're going to keep it for a long time.
Joining our conversation, former Florida State Senator and current Florida Attorney General candidate Jose Javier Rodriguez, and joining me here in Washington, writer and editor for Protect Democracy, Amanda Carpenter. JJR, what is your greatest concern about this facility?
The Donald Trump-Elon Musk civil war isn't just hilarious to watch. It's also very interesting to examine because MAGA has their brains broken by these two different men with two different social media sites dedicated to producing propaganda for them. Of course, Donald Trump is their God King, but they've come to have the same fondness for Elon, so they take his criticisms of Trump to heart, and they did very recently when they went to war again with MAGA flipping on Donald Trump over his disaster budget because of Elon. We're going to get into it all, but before we do, I think we have to start with the reason MAGA is flipping, and that was put perfectly by Elizabeth Warren right here.
Did you ever think that you and Elon Musk would find yourself on the same side advocating against a bill?
What can I say? Hell has frozen over a second time. Look, but Elon Musk is right about this. He's got it exactly right. The idea of borrowing $3.5 trillion on the nation's credit card in order to be able to give tax breaks to the likes of Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos and Mark Zuckerberg is financially nuts. It's terrible for our country because it's going to drive up the cost of borrowing for all businesses all around the country. It's going to be bad for our economy. And it also means that we're going to be saddling our children and our grandchildren and shoot our grandchildren's children to pay off those debts. No one is clamoring for that except a handful of billionaires who made big contributions to Donald Trump's inauguration and got to settle themselves in the front row. What the American people want to see is those billionaires and billionaire corporations make them pay just their fair share. It is not right that Jeff Bezos pays taxes at a lower rate than a Boston public school teacher. Make those guys pay just a fair share. And for goodness sakes, do not borrow money and run this nation further into debt so that those billionaires get even richer. That makes no damn sense.
Now, of course, we know, at least in Congress, there are little to no actual fiscal conservatives, whatever that means anymore, considering no one has blown up the debt more than Republican presidents since Reagan. But there are Republicans who themselves actually do hold that ideology still. They're not in Congress, so they're not spineless and constantly bending to Donald Trump, but they don't want to see what is coming out of this budget, and they agree with Elon Musk, at least in principle, because Elon doesn't actually care about the debt of the deficit. He just wants more subsidies to make himself a trillionaire. That's all that matters to Elon, but that's why we see these increased primary threats start coming up. And before we get to how MAGA has flipped, Tim Miller offered a very interesting but different perspective that I think is important to take into account.
I don't think that the Musk primary threat moved anybody because Republican primary voters have shown again and again over the last decade that what they want is loyalty to Donald Trump. And so you can threaten people and say, I'm going to run a bunch of ads in your district. But a lot of these guys already have a lot of ads running in their district. And if the ads aren't potent enough to resonate with Republican voters, then it's not going to work. A primary is not going to work. And so I just don't think it's a very credible threat for Musk. We'll see. Who knows if he can go out and recruit candidates. It's easier said than done. Maybe it's possible, but I think that's why you haven't seen that movement on that. And I just kind of want to slightly quibble with something that Claire said and just sort of expand. I think there are three reasons why they voted for all this. I think, yes, she mentioned the tax cuts and the extension of the Trump tax cuts, I do think is something that is important to these folks, in part because of their donors, in part because of ideology. But there are two other things. Number two is Trump just wanted something. That's what he calls a big, beautiful bill. He just wanted to be able to say that he passed something. And as silly as that sounds, these guys didn't want to get crossways with Trump. And Trump, the devil was not really in the details for Trump on this bill. He would have said anything was the big, beautiful bill. He was even, I think, open to not extending the top tax bracket when Bannon was suggesting that for a while. Trump just wanted something done. So it was we need to please Mr. Trump part of this. That's number two. And number three, I just don't think we can understate the importance of the ICE funding here. Now, again, they could have pulled that out and put it in another bill, but J.D. Vance said this explicitly last night on Twitter. He said all of the other stuff, all the stuff that you guys in the media and the Democrats are complaining about the cuts to healthcare and the cuts to food stamps, he's like, all of that is immaterial. What really matters is that we're getting enough money to ICE so they can put more migrants in jail. And I think that there is a part of the Republican base for whom that is even more animating now than the tax cuts. And some of the people in the Senate and House and certainly J.D. Vance and Stephen Miller in the White House. And so I think that making sure they have enough money to continue to send these masked thugs into communities to put people into detention centers without due process is a genuine policy view that not every Republican that voted for this has, but that some of them have, and that was a big motivator for getting this passed.
So it's Tim's claim that Elon isn't really having the sort of power or sway over MAGA Republicans that he would expect because his dollars aren't going far enough. And sure, that is true. But it's not in mass that we are looking at these flips. They are damaging long term. Do they make up 50% of MAGA? No. But as I scrolled through the comments of Donald Trump's post attacking Elon Musk last night, I saw enough that should make him very scared. And we see those right here. One post reads, "Please stop feuding. Musk is right about the debt spiraling out of control. You are right that we must do certain things with this bill. Compromise. Not cool, sir. Elon has done so much. Treating them this way is uncalled for." Another commenter wrote, "Why are you attacking Elon? You should be calling out the Republicans who voted against removing illegals from Medicaid, which is a thing that does not happen." And there were many more posts like that pointing out that Elon Musk, again, in principle, he does not actually care, is right, that Donald Trump is exploding the debt. What's so interesting here, again, if it was any other criticism from any other Republican because Donald Trump is the God King on high, they would take it with a grain of salt. But because Elon has also built him up this way, and Donald Trump has built Elon up so much, they're actually listening to him. Now again, Tim said that does not rise to the level of where Republicans are worried about the primary, but do we think their voters are just going to forget this? Sure, so many of them are on a cult, but as the midterms approach and Donald Trump is quite literally trying to change election law to prevent a landslide victory for Democrats, do we not think that all of these votes really matter? People are upset from all sides of the political aisle about the most disastrous piece of legislation in modern history. This bill is an abomination. Of course, the Republicans in Congress know it. They say it behind the scenes. They're not willing to admit it because they're spineless. But if they know it, I think the voters do too. And Donald Trump can't distract, although he will try to, which is what he spent all day doing today, which was really maybe one of the grossest displays of the presidency so far, his idiotic trip to Florida.
Well, first of all, if I was Attorney General, I'd be focused on the opioid crisis, the affordability crisis. But of course, this is a political theater, and the audience is in Washington, right? As you mentioned, cruelty as immigration policy. And I think what you see is the governor and Attorney General Uthmeier trying to show how cruel and lawless they are. And it worked, right? The president came and gave them a pat on the head for this. But the concerns are myriad. Just to give you a flavor for some of the mess that this creates here in Florida, not just as an Attorney General candidate, but as a lawyer, former state senator. There's a number of legal questions as to how they're even able to do this. They have claimed emergency powers in order to seize land from local government, go around the legislature, hand out no-bid contracts to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars of money that's supposed to be going to hurricane preparedness. And, there's a number of life safety considerations as well. Law enforcement does not want deaths in their custody. And one of the concerns that I have is that this is a setup. This has been a very deadly year when it comes to deaths in ICE custody, and Florida alone accounts for half of them. So this is a disaster, and a disaster, for our state, humanitarian, but also for our taxpayers. And it's all a big stunt.
Amanda, claiming emergency powers, reappropriating funds. We have seen this movie before.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think one question all Americans should be asking is, who is going to those camps? Because every time Donald Trump and Kristi Noem get in front of the cameras, they promise up and down it's going to be the worst of the worst, the rapists, the murderers, the drug traffickers. And yes, we do have problems in this country where those people do need to be arrested and dealt with. But then when you watch the news, the people picked up are grandmas, hairdressers, everyday people who are simply here to look for work. And the saddest part of this is that our country allowed them to come in and seek work to be abused in a lot of conditions. And now they're going to be sent to something like a tent city in the middle of the Florida Everglades on the taxpayer dime. And so, they can come out and promise, yes, this is going to be the worst of the worst. But when you look at the people who are actually detained, when you look at the way that these ICE officers are going into communities masked up, full out tactical gear, like they're going to war at Home Depot, and then they go in retaliation against some woman who's in her house because they can't find her boyfriend who hit her car, right? This is what's actually happening in America. They're blowing her doors open. We have a completely unaccountable agency doing these raids all over America. And they're going to throw all kinds of people in those kind of tent cities, because the more politicized that an agency like ICE becomes, the less professional it is. At the same time, this Congress is passing a bill to plus up their budget something like $100 billion. There are going to be raids like they talk about doing a national project. These tent cities are coming near you. And think about the people they're going to put in there. Stephen Miller talks about wanting to arrest 3,000 people a day. Ask yourself, are there 3,000 rapists and drug traffickers to even fill up these prisons that they're building?
No, and
they will find people to fill them with.
That is why we've seen some of what we have seen out of Los Angeles, where they are willy-nilly picking people up off the street. JJR, to the point that Amanda made about the politicization here, you had the Florida Republican Party blasting out a fundraising email. They were advertising T-shirts, hats, beer koozies with the nickname of the facility on it. I mean, I know we say all the time that the cruelty is the point, but fundraising off the cruelty really seems to put an
I don't think that it's out of bounds to say that those look like concentration camps to just unjustly rip people out of their communities, no due process, and throw them in a swamp, essentially. Why is this what we're spending our money on, by the way? Is this preventative? Does this do anything? Who's kept safe? It's just sad. And very scary, the tone that Donald Trump is trying to set, trying to make this seem like business as usual, because then what's next? It's the same thing that we see with LA. If this is where it's going to start, if there are still National Guardsmen and women, there's still Marines there, nothing's happening, then what happens when Donald Trump does start a conflict? Then who does he send? If this is what Donald Trump does for a problem that doesn't exist, when he makes one up, how bad does it get? I don't know if I'm offering a lot of hope there, but it is a scary thought, and we have to continue to pay attention and call it out. We're going to do so on this show. Thanks for watching this video, and if you stuck around to the end, drop a blue heart in the comments. And until next time, I'll see you soon.